Alaska covers 663,000 square miles. It is massive, and we are often told its interior remains largely unmapped simply because the terrain is too vast to govern. But that assumption conflicts with modern reality. Federal agencies, universities, and geological institutes have spent decades actively documenting this territory, classifying 65% of the land specifically based on remote accessibility. We possess the technology to map every inch, yet in the interior of the state, there is an anomaly that breaks the rules of official cartography. Between 1987 and 1994, the United States Geological Survey completely removed a specific, massive geographic area from two published topographic maps. No errata document was ever issued to explain the deletion. No replacement map was drafted. The coordinates themselves simply ceased to exist in the public record, replaced by a blank grid square that ignores the surrounding topography. This deletion belongs to a pattern repeating across 10 distinct regions of the Alaskan wilderness. These areas share a consistent trail of heavily edited federal documents and expeditions with no recorded return. When we examine the missing data in these exact regions, a clear mechanism emerges. The empty spaces on the map are not a failure of modern satellite imaging. They are the result of a deliberate, active effort to remove specific coordinates from public view. Look at the Aniakchak volcanic caldera, a 6-mile-wide crater on the Alaska Peninsula. If isolation were the only barrier, we would expect zero access. But the logistical infrastructure already exists here. There are regular flights to King Salmon, 56 miles away, accredited guides ready to make the trip, and established access protocols. This chart compares Aniakchak to the second least visited federal park in America. Despite the access infrastructure, Aniakchak recorded exactly 142 visitors for an entire year, while the next lowest park recorded 11,000. The numbers drop off a massive statistical cliff. The National Park Service has never published a deterrent study to explain why people strictly avoid this specific caldera. In Aniakchak, the deterrent appears passive, but in the Tongass National Forest, the suppression is entirely active. Deep within this dense, steep terrain, the U.S. Forest Service maintains 14 specific zones that they have permanently classified as having administratively suspended access. Official access requests for these 14 zones, submitted by researchers, are met with denial notices in record turnaround times. When researchers apply, their projects are formally closed and no results are published. The suspension status has been actively enforced since 1994, without a single published review date or an official document explaining the reason. By utilizing administrative suspensions rather than physical barricades, agencies create invisible walls. They successfully lock the public out of these specific zones indefinitely, entirely avoiding the requirement to formally document or explain what poses a threat inside. This pattern of data control escalates in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The territory covers 30,000 square miles. The Fish and Wildlife Service has managed it for 6 decades. In all that time, less than 1% of the land has been traversed by researchers who successfully filed formal expedition records. In 2008, a Freedom of Information Act request targeted a 340-page internal management report on the refuge from 2001. The government released the document, but exactly 51 consecutive pages were completely blacked out. The targeted section corresponds to a single chapter heading, Field Observations Zones 7 through 12, 1998 season. We see a similar silence hundreds of miles south on Admiralty Island.
The island has the highest documented density of brown bears in America.
Yet the Forest Service manages 97% of it without a single interior access trail, without regular patrols, and entirely without ground rescue protocols. Researchers from the University of Oregon conducted extensive archaeological surveys here in the 1980s, producing heavy documentation of the perimeter, but they recorded nothing regarding the interior. The local Tlingit community, who have inhabited the island for generations, actively point toward the center of the island, but refuse to offer any name or description for what exists there. When heavily funded federal data collection and centuries of indigenous oral history simultaneously go blank in the exact same geographic locations, we are looking at an intentional boundary. The erasure is a choice. The consequences of crossing these boundaries become clear when human lives require intervention. Denali National Park is the most heavily monitored region in Alaska, equipped with advanced weather stations, established ranger routes, and active aerial rescue protocols. This map tracks National Park Service data between 1980 and 2019. Despite the heavy monitoring infrastructure, the grid is marked with 102 specific incidents classified officially as inconclusive location. The term means a search was initiated, but the closure protocol was never completed. There was no successful rescue, no confirmed death, and no body recovered. This breakdown in authority reaches its peak on the Seward Peninsula, specifically around Nome. Nome is not an isolated outpost. It has a hospital, an airport, satellite coverage, and serves as the finish line of the Iditarod sled race. It is a connected hub, yet between 1960 and 2004, at least 24 people vanished from Nome and its immediate surroundings without leaving a single piece of traceable evidence. There was no indicator of animal attack, no weather failure, and no terrain accident. The sheer volume of untraceable disappearances triggered a deployment of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit from Quantico. The FBI interviewed locals and pursued the leads. Their final conclusion blamed the disappearances on alcohol and the harsh wilderness. But they filed no charges, confirmed no cause of death, and failed to locate a single body from the 24 cases. Because no physical evidence was secured, the Alaska Bureau of Investigation was forced to leave every single case formally open. In Nome and Denali, the bureaucratic machine stops functioning. The agencies have collided with a reality in these specific zones that their protocols are unable to categorize or resolve. The lack of data inside the Alaskan interior is a highly engineered boundary maintained by federal authorities. It requires active energy to maintain. The 102 conclusively open cases in Denali and the 51 heavily redacted pages of the Fish and Wildlife Report in the Arctic Refuge are symptoms of the exact same institutional response mechanism. When federal agencies are confronted with terrain conditions and events that are entirely incompatible with standard human survival and standard rescue procedures, they utilize administrative silence. Suspensions, mass redactions, and permanently open case files serve as a desperate, quiet management tool. That is the exact reason the Geological Survey permanently scrubbed those interior coordinates from their topographic maps in the 1990s. The removal ensures the public has no reference point to begin looking closer. Federal agencies, universities, and geological institutes have spent decades documenting this state. The missing sections on the map are not the places they failed to explore. They are the places where authorities found exactly what was out there, realized they could not control it, and chose to stop talking completely.